The shadow he cast stretched longer than any man's should. At the edge of the Red Canyon, Makya stood 7 feet tall, his massive frame silhouetted against the setting sun. The Apache giant's weathered hands trembled slightly as he arranged 5 stones in their familiar pattern. A ritual repeated every evening for 2,000 sunsets. The villagers whispered he was dangerous, cursed, better left alone. But they didn't see the gentle way he placed each stone, or how his eyes searched the horizon for the wife who never returned. The mountains knew his patience. The wind carried his silent prayers. But this evening would be different. 3 small figures appeared on the distant trail, stumbling toward his isolated home. Would these lost children flee from the giant everyone feared, or would they see what no one else could? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Makya had not always lived alone. Born under an eclipse that the elders called a blessing and others named a curse, he had grown beyond normal size before his 10th year. By manhood, he towered over the tallest warriors of his band. His hands could crush stone, yet they carved the most delicate figures from wood. His voice rumbled like distant thunder, so he chose to speak rarely, preferring the language of gestures and meaningful silence. The walking staff he leaned upon bore his weight and history both. 7 feet of ancient juniper, polished by years of his grip, it carried the secret symbols of his lineage, small carvings visible only to those who knew where to look. His grandfather, also a giant among the people, had fashioned it during Makya's birth moon. The tall ones, his grandfather had told him, are meant to see farther, reach higher, and protect longer, a burden and a blessing. For 30 years, Makya had lived among his people. Then came Niall, hair like midnight and laugh like spring water over stones. She alone approached him without fear, standing barely to his chest yet meeting his eyes with unwavering directness. She spoke enough for both of them. Her hands, small but quick, taught his clumsy fingers to weave baskets tight enough to carry water. Under moonlight, she traced the scars on his arms and told him they were maps to his courage. 5 summers they shared. 5 winters huddled before the fire, her small frame tucked against his massive chest. Then came the fever that swept through the villages. Makya's size had always brought unusual strength against illness, but Niall, she burned with it for 7 days. On the 8th morning, while he slept beside her after a night's vigil, she rose and walked out. Following her trail, he found only footprints that ended mysteriously at the canyon's edge. The tribal elders spoke of spirits calling their own. The medicine man whispered of walking the sky path. But Makya believed she lived. Each day for 2,000 days he searched, canyon paths, trading posts, distant settlements. Each night he arranged 5 stones. 1 for each year of their marriage, a circle to guide her home. The villagers in the settlement below initially offered sympathy. Time transformed it to discomfort, then suspicion. His relentless questions about a woman long presumed dead became unseemly. His massive presence at their gatherings unsettling. Children were called inside when he approached. Eventually, he stopped coming. The cabin he'd built for Niall stood larger than necessary. Doorways high enough that he needn't stoop, a bed long enough for his frame, yet still with the small touches she'd added. Woven blankets in bright patterns. Clay pots painted with birds. A rocking chair carved to her smaller proportions. He maintained them all, dusting and repairing with the same meticulous care. He showed his stone arrangements. Now, squinting against the setting sun, Makya studied the approaching figures. Children, that much was clear from their size. 3 of them, moving with the desperate stumbling gait of exhaustion. The smallest one repeatedly fell, only to be pulled up by the others. Their clothes hung in tatters. Even from this distance he could see they carried nothing, no packs, no water. Desert wanderers without supplies rarely survived. Makya's hand tightened around his staff. Children from the settlement wouldn't venture this far alone. These came from elsewhere, carrying unknown stories. He should retreat inside, bar his door. Nothing good came from entanglement with the outside world, especially when that world feared you on sight. Yet he remained watching. The smallest child fell again, this time staying down. The older two knelt beside the fallen one, their gestures frantic even at this distance. Makya sighed deeply, his massive chest expanding like bellows. Setting his 5 stones carefully in their place, he straightened to his full height and took his first step toward the strangers. The dying light caught his movement. The tallest child looked up, pointed. Even across the distance, Makya felt the fear hit them like a physical force. The older children froze, staring at the giant figure approaching through the gathering twilight. Makya slowed his pace, planting his staff deliberately with each step. He raised his empty hand, palm forward, the universal sign of peace. Whether they would recognize it, whether they would flee or stand their ground, that remained to be seen. "Get up, Toby. Please get up." Liam's voice cracked with exhaustion as he tugged at his little brother's arm. 4 days since they'd had real food. 2 since their water ran out. The 6-year-old's face had grown gaunt, his normally energetic limbs limp with fatigue. Sarah, her 9 years seeming much older in this moment, knelt on Toby's other side. Her once neat braids had unraveled, blonde hair matted with dust and sweat. "Look," she whispered, pointing ahead. "There's a house up there, just a little farther." Liam followed her finger, spotting the crude cabin perched near the canyon rim. Smoke curled from its chimney, promising life, warmth, perhaps help. But the 12-year-old had learned harsh lessons about the deceitful nature of hope. "We don't know who lives there," he cautioned, even as he hoisted Toby onto his back. The familiar weight, lighter now after days of walking, settled against his shoulders. "Could be anyone. Anyone is better than no one," Sarah replied with simple child's logic. She reached into her dress pocket, touching the half-burned photograph they'd salvaged from the wagon. The edges were charred, their mother's face partially obscured by flame damage, but their father's smile remained intact. It was all they had left. They'd been asleep when the attack came. Liam had awakened to shouting, then gunshots. His father had thrust Toby into his arms, pushed them through the wagon's back canvas, and whispered one command: "Run. Don't look back." They'd run until their lungs burned, hiding in a ravine as more shots echoed. Dawn revealed smoke rising from where their wagon had been. Liam had crept back alone, finding only ashes, blood, and their parents' bodies already being circled by vultures. He'd retched, grabbed what few supplies he could salvage, and returned to his siblings with false reassurances that their parents had told them to go ahead to the next town. That had been 4 days ago. Their meager supplies had dwindled to nothing. Direction had become meaningless, just the vague notion that civilization might lie westward. The siblings had walked, rested, walked more, following the sun's arc across the merciless sky. "Something's moving up there," Sarah said suddenly, freezing in place. Liam squinted toward the cabin. A figure stood at the edge of the property, impossibly tall, broader than any man Liam had ever seen. As they watched, the giant figure began moving toward them with slow, deliberate strides. Is it human?" Sarah whispered, shrinking against her brother. Liam swallowed hard. Stories told around campfires came rushing back. Tales of mountain monsters and canyon spirits that lured travelers to their doom. But Toby's slight, feverish breathing against his neck left no room for retreat. "Stay behind me," he ordered, gently lowering Toby to the ground. "If I tell you to run, grab him and go that way." He pointed toward a jumble of rocks that might offer hiding places. The approaching figure resolved into a man, if such a giant could be called merely a man. 7 feet tall at least, with broad shoulders and long black hair streaked with gray. Native, by his copper skin and clothing. He carried a staff that looked like a small tree trunk in his massive hand. Sarah clutched the back of Liam's tattered shirt. "He's so big," she breathed. The giant stopped 30 paces away, raising one hand palm forward. The gesture seemed peaceful, but Liam had seen the friendly smiles of traders who later cheated his father, the welcoming waves of townspeople who later made it clear their kind weren't welcome. "What do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice small. Liam measured the distance to the rock pile against Toby's condition and their own exhaustion. Running wasn't an option. Fighting was laughable. Only one choice remained. "We talk," he said, stepping forward on trembling legs. "Sir," he called out, his voice cracking, "my brother's sick. We've been walking for days. Our parents." He faltered, the lie sticking in his throat. "We need help." The giant remained motionless, his expression unreadable in the fading light. Then, slowly, he planted his staff in the earth, reached into a pouch at his waist, and extended his open hand toward them. In his massive palm lay a waterskin. Liam stared at the offered waterskin, caught between desperate thirst and ingrained caution. The giant remained perfectly still, his arm extended, waiting with a patience that seemed as vast as his frame. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, stepping forward before Liam could stop her. She took the waterskin, her small hands dwarfed by the giant's massive palm. When the man spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder, yet surprisingly gentle. "Drink slowly." Just 2 words, heavily accented. Sarah carried the water to Toby first, cradling his head while dribbling liquid between his cracked lips. The boy sputtered, then swallowed greedily. "Slow," Liam reminded her, echoing the giant's wisdom despite his misgivings. The man watched them with dark, unfathomable eyes. He made no move to come closer, seemingly content to maintain the distance that kept the children from bolting in fear. As Toby revived slightly, Liam allowed himself a few precious swallows, the water cooling his parched throat. Only after both brothers had drunk did Sarah take her share, sighing with relief. "I'm Sarah," she said suddenly, addressing the giant with the directness only a child could muster. "This is Liam and Toby. We got lost." The giant nodded once. "Makya," he said, touching his chest. "Thank you for the water, Mr. Makya," she continued, attempting politeness despite their desperate circumstances. "Just Makya," he corrected softly. Toby, partially revived by the water, stared up at the giant with undisguised wonder rather than fear. "You're big as a tree," he observed. A shadow of something, perhaps amusement, crossed Makya's weathered face. He nodded again, then gestured toward the cabin with a slow sweep of his arm. An invitation. Liam hesitated. Shelter and potential food warred with suspicion born of recent trauma. "We don't want to impose," he began, the formal phrase one he'd heard his father use. As if sensing the boy's reluctance, Makya didn't press. Instead, he reached into another pouch and withdrew a strip of dried meat, breaking it into 3 pieces. He placed them on a flat rock between them, then stepped back. The smell hit the children simultaneously, rich, savory, promising sustenance. Toby whimpered with want. "Go on," Liam relented, helping his brother forward. The children devoured the jerky, struggling to remember manners despite ravenous hunger. Through lowered lashes, Liam studied their benefactor. Makya's clothing was simple but well-maintained. Buckskin leggings, a loose cotton shirt open at the throat revealing a beaded necklace, moccasins that had seen many miles. His face bore deep lines around the eyes and mouth, speaking of a man well into middle years, though his black hair showed only scattered gray. Most telling were his hands, massive yet marked with the calluses of work rather than war. These were not a warrior's hands, for all their strength. The realization eased some of Liam's tension. Toby finished his portion first, then swayed on his feet. Without warning, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Sarah screamed. Liam lunged forward, but Makya moved with surprising speed for his size. Before Liam could reach his brother, the giant had gathered Toby in arms that made the boy look like a doll. "No!" Liam shouted, fear resurging. "Put him down!" Makya paused, the unconscious child cradled against his chest. His eyes met Liam's, something like sorrow in their depths. "Boy sick," he said simply. "Needs shelter." The practicality of their situation hit Liam like a physical blow. Night approached. They had nowhere else to go. His brother needed help beyond what he could provide. "Okay," he conceded, voice shaking. "But we stay together." Makya nodded once, then turned toward the cabin, his strides measured to allow the children to follow. Sarah took Liam's hand, squeezing tightly. "He's gentle," she whispered, "like in the stories Mom told. Remember the friendly giant?" Liam didn't answer. Childhood tales provided little comfort against the harsh realities they'd faced. Yet as they approached the cabin, the warm light spilling from its windows offered the first promise of safety they'd known in days. Inside, a single large room greeted them. A fire burned in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows. Above it hung a black iron pot, the source of the smoke they'd seen. A wooden table, a chair sized for Makya's frame, a smaller rocking chair oddly out of proportion. A bed, neatly made with colorful blankets. Shelves lined with provisions and clay pots. And everywhere, small carved figures. Animals, people, birds in flight, testament to patient hands and quiet hours. Makya laid Toby on the bed, his movements surprisingly tender for one so large. Dawn filtered through the cabin's single window, casting pale light across Toby's sleeping form. The boy's fever had broken sometime in the night, his breathing now deep and regular. Beside him, Sarah curled like a comma, one hand protectively touching her brother's arm even in sleep. Liam sat rigid in the small rocking chair, having refused to sleep. His vigil had lasted through the night, watching as Makya prepared a bitter-smelling tea for Toby, coaxing it between the boy's lips with surprising tenderness. The giant had then settled on a buffalo hide near the door, his back against the wall, respecting the children's wariness by keeping his distance. Now Makya stirred, rising silently for his massive size. He nodded once to Liam, then moved to the hearth, adding wood to the banked coals with practiced movements. "Why are you helping us?" Liam finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Makya continued his work for several moments before answering. "Children alone," as if that explained everything. "Our parents were killed," Liam admitted, the words spilling out before he could reconsider. "Robbers attacked our wagon 4 days ago." The giant's hands stilled briefly. "Sorry," he said, the single word heavy with genuine feeling. "We were heading to meet our uncle in Tucson." The lie came easily, practiced during their journey. Better than admitting they had nowhere to go, no one waiting. Makya said nothing, but his eyes, dark and knowing, suggested he heard the falsehood beneath the words. He returned to preparing a simple breakfast: corn mush sweetened with honey, strips of jerky soaked to softness in broth. As the smell of food filled the cabin, Sarah stirred, sitting up with the instant alertness of a child accustomed to uncertain circumstances. Her eyes darted around the room, relief flooding her face when she spotted Liam. "Morning," Makya greeted her, voice gentle despite its rumbling depth. She offered a tentative smile. "Thank you for helping Toby." The giant nodded, then served the meal in wooden bowls carved to different sizes, the smallest clearly intended for a child, though not as small as Toby. Sarah noticed too. "Do you have children?" she asked with innocent directness. Something flickered across Makya's face, pain quickly masked. He shook his head once. "The small chair and bowl," she persisted. "They're not yours." "Sarah," Liam warned, but curiosity had awakened in him too. Makya placed the bowls before them, then touched the beaded necklace at his throat. "Wife," he said simply. "Niall." "Where is she?" Sarah asked, looking around as if expecting a woman to appear. Makya moved to a small shelf near the bed, retrieving something wrapped in soft leather. Unwrapping it carefully, he revealed a necklace of blue beads interspersed with small carved animal figures. He handed it to Sarah with ceremonial gravity. "She made this?" Sarah asked, fingers tracing the delicate carvings. Makya nodded. "Gone," he said. 2,000 days. Understanding dawned on Liam. "The stones outside. You put them there for her." Another nod. "She walk away. Never return. Like our parents." Toby's voice, weak but clear, startled them all. The boy had awakened unnoticed, his eyes fever-bright but lucid. "They're never coming back either." Sarah returned the necklace reverently to Makya, then moved to comfort her younger brother. "But we have each other," she reminded him. While Sarah coaxed Toby to eat, Liam studied their host with new understanding. The giant's gentleness, his solitary existence, the cabin maintained as if waiting for someone's return. All spoke of loyalty and loss. "The villagers," Liam ventured. "The ones we passed before the canyon. They seemed afraid when we mentioned this direction." Makya's expression hardened slightly. "They fear what they don't understand." "Because you're different," Sarah said with a child's blunt insight. "Like how people looked at us funny when Mom got sick and her hair fell out." The comparison seemed to surprise Makya. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes, like that." Later, as Toby rested and Makya stepped outside to tend to morning chores, Sarah whispered to Liam, "I think we should stay, just for a little while." Liam watched through the window as the giant carefully gathered eggs from a small coop. "It's not safe anywhere," he replied. "Those men might still be looking for us." "But they wouldn't look here," she reasoned. "Nobody comes here, and he's strong enough to protect us." "We don't know him," Liam cautioned. Sarah's hand closed around the charred photograph in her pocket. "I think Mom and Dad would want us to be safe," she said quietly. "And I think we're safe with him." Liam had no answer for that. Outside, Makya stood at the canyon's edge, looking into the distance, a solitary figure both powerful and somehow deeply alone. 3 days passed in cautious coexistence. Toby recovered swiftly, trailing Makya like a shadow whenever the giant performed his daily tasks. Sarah explored the cabin's surroundings, always within sight of the door. Liam maintained his vigilance, watching, assessing, planning for their eventual departure. On the 4th morning, Makya gestured to his dwindling supplies. "Need more," he explained. "Going to trading post." The simple statement sent a ripple of anxiety through Liam. "We'll be fine here," he said quickly, too quickly. Makya studied him with those deep, knowing eyes. "Come," he said finally. "All of you. Not good to stay alone." And so they found themselves walking the winding path down the canyon side, Makya setting a deliberate pace for shorter legs. Toby rode on the giant's shoulders, small hands gripping his long hair for balance, face alight with the novel perspective. "Why do you live so far from everyone?" Sarah asked, skipping occasionally to keep up. "Peace," Makya answered, helping her across a difficult stretch. "Quiet." "Loneliness," Liam thought but didn't say. As they descended, the landscape transformed from rust-red canyon walls to scrubby foothills dotted with juniper and sage. Eventually, a cluster of buildings came into view, the small settlement at the canyon's base. Perhaps 20 structures. A general store, a blacksmith, a saloon, a small church, scattered houses. Frontier existence clinging to the edge of the wilderness. Makya's stride slowed as they approached. "Stay close," he advised, lifting Toby down from his shoulders. The change was immediate and palpable. As they entered the settlement's single dusty street, conversations halted. Doors closed. A woman hurried her children inside. An old man on the store's porch straightened from his whittling, hand moving to the knife at his belt. "It's him," Liam heard someone whisper. "The mad giant. Got children with him now," another voice responded. "Lord help us." Makya moved with deliberate calmness, his face impassive as stone. Only the slight tightening of his jaw betrayed awareness of the hostile reception. The trading post occupied the largest building, its porch sagging slightly beneath weather-grade boards. A bell jangled discordantly as they entered. Behind a cluttered counter, a balding man with spectacles looked up, his expression shifting from merchant's welcome to guarded suspicion. "Makya," he acknowledged coldly. "Been some time." The giant nodded once. From a pouch at his waist, he withdrew several coins and carefully placed them on the counter. Beside them, he set a list written in precise, surprisingly delicate script. The shopkeeper barely glanced at the paper. "Prices have gone up." Makya added another coin without comment. "That there silver or just Apache trash?" A voice slurred from the back of the store. A heavy-set man leaned against a barrel of nails, liquor on his breath despite the early hour. "Don't want no heathen money." Makya didn't react, but Liam felt the giant's hand settle protectively on his shoulder. The shopkeeper's eyes flicked nervously between them. "Your coin's good here, Makya. Just get your supplies and go." As the man gathered the requested items, Liam wandered to a bulletin board near the door. Notices for cattle sales, a church social, a traveling dentist's imminent arrival. And there, prominently displayed, a poster that froze his blood. "Missing children," it proclaimed in bold letters. 3 siblings, last seen west of Pine Creek. Handsome reward for information. The description matched them exactly. Liam, Sarah, Toby. Their ages, hair colors, distinguishing marks. At the bottom, a name, Lancaster Mining Company. Liam backed away, bumping into Makya. The giant looked down, questioning, then followed his gaze to the poster. Something flickered in those dark eyes, recognition, concern. "Time to go," Makya said quietly, gathering their supplies. Outside, the drunk from the store staggered after them. "Hey, those your brats, Injun? There's a reward out for some runaway kids. Mighty coincidental you show up with 3 that match the bill." Makya didn't slow or turn. "My sister's children," he said, the lie smooth and calm. "Visiting. Ain't never heard of you having family." The man persisted, following them down the street. "Far as anyone knows, you're alone up there. 'Cept for that squaw you claim walked off. More likely you." Makya stopped so abruptly the man nearly collided with his back. The giant turned, drawing himself to his full imposing height, looking down at his accuser. He said nothing, did nothing, just looked. The drunk faltered, bravado wilting. "Just saying is all," he muttered, backing away. "People talk." The journey back to the cabin passed in tense silence. Only when they crested the canyon rim, the settlement hidden from view, did Makya speak. "Trouble follows you," he observed, not unkindly. Liam met his gaze directly. "Yes," he admitted. "And now it might find you too." That evening, Makya said nothing about the poster, asking no questions as he prepared their meal. But his evening ritual changed. After arranging his 5 stones for Niall, he walked the perimeter of his property, studying the approaches with careful attention. Liam watched from the doorway, understanding the message. The giant was now standing guard. Days blended into a week. Routine settled over them like a comfortable blanket. Morning chores, simple meals, afternoons spent in various pursuits. Makya spoke little but communicated much through gesture, expression, and occasional well-chosen words. Toby blossomed under the giant's patient attention. The boy followed Makya everywhere, mimicking his movements, trying to match his long stride. "Makya," Toby pronounced carefully one morning, struggling with the unfamiliar name. "Can I help?" The giant had been splitting logs for firewood, the heavy axe looking like a toy in his massive hands. He paused, considering, then set down the axe and moved to a workbench near the cabin. From a drawer, he withdrew a small knife and a piece of pine wood. With ceremonial gravity, he presented them to the boy. "Careful," he cautioned, showing Toby how to hold the knife safely. "Like this." Settling on a stump, Makya took another piece of wood and began carving, his huge fingers surprisingly dexterous. Toby watched intently, then tried to mimic the movements. "What are you making?" the boy asked. Makya's hands continued their work. "Horse," he answered. "For you." Toby's face lit with wonder. "Really? My own?" The giant nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. From the cabin doorway, Sarah watched the exchange, her own curiosity piqued. Unlike Toby's immediate attachment or Liam's cautious distance, she maintained a middle ground, friendly but reserved. Later, while Makya and Toby continued their carving lesson, she slipped into the cabin to help prepare dinner. As she reached for the dried herbs hanging from a ceiling beam, her sleeve caught on a high shelf, dislodging a small wooden box. It fell with a clatter, its contents spilling across the floor. Papers, a small leather pouch, and dozens of drawings on scraps of paper and birch bark. Sarah knelt to gather them, then paused, captivated. The drawings showed landscapes, animals, people, all rendered with surprising skill and detail. One drawing made her breath catch. A woman's face, beautiful and serene, drawn over and over from different angles. The same face that matched the carved wooden pendant Makya wore always around his neck. "Niall," Sarah whispered, recognizing the lost wife. Behind her, the door creaked. She turned, guilt flushing her cheeks as Makya entered. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to pry." The giant stood motionless, his eyes on the scattered drawings. For a terrible moment, Sarah feared his anger. Instead, he knelt beside her, gathering the pictures with gentle care. "You made these," she said, not a question. "They're beautiful." Makya nodded, touching one drawing of Niall with a fingertip. "To remember," he explained. "My mom used to draw too," Sarah offered, pulling the charred photograph from her pocket. "And she sang all the time. Dad said her voice could make flowers grow." Something in Makya's expression softened. He selected one of his drawings, a soaring eagle, and held it out to her. "Keep it," he said. Sarah accepted the gift with appropriate solemnity. "Could you teach me? Like you're teaching Toby to carve?" The request seemed to surprise him. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. Outside, Liam watched the cabin from his perch on a boulder overlooking the canyon. 7 days since they'd arrived, each one pushing their departure further from certainty. He should insist they leave, continue toward some imagined safety. Yet where would they go? How would 3 children survive the journey? The reward poster proved someone was looking for them, someone with the resources to extend their search this far. The sound of laughter, Toby's high and clear, accompanied by a deeper rumbling chuckle, drew his attention. His brother sat beside Makya, proudly holding up a roughly carved shape that might charitably be called a horse. The giant praised the effort with serious attention, then presented Toby with his own carving, a perfect miniature stallion, mane flowing, one hoof raised in motion. Toby's face transformed with delight. "Look, Liam," he called, spotting his older brother. "Makya made it for me." The giant looked up, his eyes meeting Liam's across the distance. No demand in that gaze, no expectation, only a patient offering of connection. Liam hesitated, then slid down from his boulder. "It's really good," he acknowledged, approaching them. Maybe you could show me how to make one too?" Makya's smile, rare and transformative, was answer enough. The coughing began in the night, harsh, barking sounds that jerked Liam from sleep. Across the small room, Sarah sat upright in the bed she shared with Toby, her face ghostly in the moonlight. "Liam," she whispered, fear threading her voice. Something's wrong. By morning, Sarah burned with fever. Her breathing came in labored gasps, each inhalation a visible struggle that hollowed her cheeks and lifted her shoulders with effort. "What did you do to her?" Liam demanded, rounding on Makya as the giant examined Sarah with gentle hands. "She was fine yesterday." Makya didn't react to the accusation. "Chest sickness," he said, placing a massive palm against Sarah's forehead. "Comes quick. Like the fever that took your wife?" Liam's words struck like physical blows, but he was beyond caring. Fear had transmuted instantly to anger, and Makya made a convenient target. The giant flinched slightly, the only indication the barb had landed. "Different," he said quietly. "This can heal." "How do you know?" "You're not a doctor." "No," Makya agreed. "But I know plants. Medicines." He rose to his full height, gathering his staff. "Stay with her. I will find what's needed." Liam blocked his path. "I'm not letting you leave us alone." Something like sadness crossed Makya's face. "Then Sarah suffers longer." The simple logic deflated Liam's anger. He stepped aside, watching as the giant ducked through the doorway. Toby, uncharacteristically silent, crawled onto the bed beside his sister, his small hand finding hers. "Don't worry," he told Liam with a child's faith. "Makya will fix her." The giant returned midday, his gathering pouch full of leaves, roots, and bark. Without explanation, he began preparing various mixtures, crushing some plants to paste, steeping others in boiling water, mixing honey with pungent powders. Liam hovered anxiously, torn between suspicion and desperate hope. "What is all this?" "Medicine," Makya answered, focused on his work. From a shelf, he retrieved a clay jar, adding its contents to a steaming pot. "Breathe steam first, then drink tea, then poultice." The remedies looked nothing like the doctor's tinctures and pills Liam remembered from town. But Sarah's condition left little room for hesitation. Her lips had taken on a bluish tinge, her breathing more labored with each passing hour. "What do we do?" Liam asked, hostility replaced by helplessness. Makya arranged cushions to elevate Sarah's head and shoulders. "Bring blanket," he instructed. "Make tent." He demonstrated, creating a canopy over the steaming pot that directed the vapor toward Sarah's face. The pungent steam filled the small enclosure. Sarah coughed violently at first, then gradually her breathing eased. Color returned incrementally to her lips. Throughout the day and into the night, they repeated the treatments. Makya showed unexpected patience, teaching Liam and Toby how to prepare each remedy, explaining the purpose of different plants. "This," he said, holding up a white flowering plant, "opens the chest. Another, a gnarled root, fights fever. Bark stripped from a specific tree, calms cough." Liam absorbed the knowledge with growing respect. "How did you learn all this?" "Grandfather," Makya replied. "He was healer." A rare, extended explanation. "When you are different, you must be useful. Otherwise, people have no reason to accept you." Night deepened. Toby eventually succumbed to exhaustion, curling at the foot of Sarah's bed. Liam fought sleep, determined to maintain his vigil despite burning eyes and leaden limbs. "Rest," Makya urged. "I will watch." "I can't," Liam insisted. "She's my responsibility." The giant studied him thoughtfully. "Heavy burden for young shoulders." "I promised my father," Liam said, the words catching in his throat. "Right before I promised I'd take care of them." Makya nodded, understanding. "Good brother," he acknowledged. "But even warriors must sleep." He settled his massive frame on the floor beside Sarah's bed. "I will wake you if change comes." Against his will, Liam's eyes grew heavier. The last image before sleep claimed him was Makya's broad back, a mountain of vigilance between the children and harm. He awakened to sunlight and Sarah's voice, weak but clear, asking for water. Disoriented, Liam jerked upright from where he'd slumped against the wall. Beside Sarah's bed, Makya sat, his massive hand engulfing hers as he helped her drink. "The fever broke an hour ago," the giant reported, satisfaction evident in his tone. Liam scrambled to his sister's side. Her face remained pale, but the deadly flush had faded. Her breathing, while still congested, had lost its desperate quality. "You stayed all night," Liam observed, noting Makya's reddened eyes and slumped shoulders. The giant nodded once. "Thank you," Liam said, the words inadequate but heartfelt. "I was wrong to blame you." Makya's expression remained impassive, but something in his eyes softened. "Family protects family," he said simply. Even when afraid, the word hung in the air between them. Family. Not spoken as fact or claim, but as observation, the recognition of a truth already present but not yet acknowledged. Sarah's recovery proceeded steadily over the following days. The crisis had shifted something fundamental in the cabin's atmosphere. A tentative trust had solidified into something stronger. Even Liam found himself relaxing his vigilance, allowing Toby and Sarah greater freedom to explore the area around the cabin under Makya's watchful eye. The giant himself seemed changed, his customary silence occasionally broken by longer explanations or rare observations. He continued teaching Toby to carve, showed Sarah the basics of drawing, and began instructing Liam in tracking and hunting. 2 weeks after their arrival, the children had begun to feel something like safety. The illusion shattered with hoofbeats. Makya heard them first, his head lifting sharply from the rabbit snare he was demonstrating to Liam. "Inside," he ordered, voice low but urgent. "Now." The children scrambled toward the cabin, but before they reached the door, 2 riders crested the path from the canyon. Makya positioned himself between the approaching men and the children, his massive frame creating a protective barrier. "Afternoon," called the lead rider, a wiry man with a drooping mustache and cold eyes. "Hope we're not intruding." Beside him, a heavy-set companion with a pockmarked face surveyed the property with calculating interest. Both men wore trail-dusty clothes and gun belts that had seen obvious use. "Private land," Makya stated flatly. "Just passing through," the first man replied, his gaze sliding past the giant to where the children stood. "Looking for some lost youngsters. Heard there might be 3 orphans wandering about." Liam stepped forward, but Makya's arm blocked his path. "My sister's children," the giant said, repeating the lie he'd used in the village. "Visiting." The wiry man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's so? Funny coincidence. We're looking for 3 children matching their description. Their uncle's mighty worried about them." He withdrew a folded paper from his vest. "Got a notice right here." Makya didn't move to take the paper. "No children lost here. Mind if we water our horses?" the second man asked, already dismounting. "Been a long ride." Without waiting for permission, he led his horse toward the small spring near the cabin. His path took him closer to the children. As he passed, he tipped his hat to Sarah. "Hello, little lady. Don't suppose your name might be Sarah Lancaster?" The girl paled, shrinking back against Liam. "Thomas," the first man warned. "No need to frighten the children." To Makya, he added, "Pardon my friend's manners. I'm Wilson. We're just doing a job." "Job finished," Makya replied. "No Lancasters here." Wilson's friendly demeanor slipped slightly. "Now that's peculiar. I don't recall mentioning a last name." He leaned forward in his saddle. "Listen, big fellow. There's a handsome reward for these children. Enough to share if you're hiding them. Their uncle's a wealthy man, just wants his kin back safe." "Uncle," Toby piped up, confusion evident. "We don't have an." "Toby," Sarah hissed, tugging his arm. Too late. Wilson's expression hardened into certainty. "Well, now that clears things up." His hand drifted toward his holster. "How about we all stop pretending? Those are the Lancaster children, and we're taking them back where they belong." Makya moved with surprising speed for his size. One massive hand closed around Wilson's boot, yanking him from the saddle. The man hit the ground hard, his gun half-drawn. Thomas grabbed for his own weapon, but froze as Makya's staff pressed against his chest with unmistakable threat. "Leave," the giant commanded, voice like rolling thunder. "Now." Wilson scrambled to his feet, fury replacing shock. "You're making a mistake, Indian. That reward money can turn into a bounty real quick." "Not for me," Makya replied evenly. "For them." He nodded toward the children. Something in his tone gave even Wilson pause. The bounty hunter remounted carefully, never turning his back. "We'll be back," he promised, "with more men." "I will be here," Makya answered simply. The men retreated down the canyon path, looking back frequently until they disappeared from view. Only then did Makya lower his staff. "Inside," he directed, ushering the children toward the cabin. Once the door was secured, he turned to Liam. "Truth now. All of it." The boy sank onto a stool, shoulders slumping with the weight of secrets too long carried. "Our name is Lancaster," he admitted. "Our father owned half the Lancaster Mining Company. His partner was a man named Garrett." "Bad man," Toby interjected. "Dad was always arguing with him." Liam nodded. 3 weeks ago, Dad caught Mr. Garrett stealing from the company. He was going to go to the authorities with proof. His voice caught. "The next night, Garrett's men attacked our wagon. They killed our parents. We were supposed to be asleep, but I saw." Sarah placed a hand on her brother's shoulder. "We saw Mr. Garrett give the order," she said quietly. "He saw us watching. That's why they're looking for us." Makya absorbed this information in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally, he moved to the window, studying the canyon path. "They will return," he said, "with more guns." "We should leave," Liam said miserably. "This is our problem, not yours." The giant turned, his decision already made. "No," he stated with simple finality. "You stay. I protect." "Why?" Liam asked. "Why risk yourself for us?" Makya's hand rose unconsciously to touch the beaded necklace at his throat. "Because," he said, "some things are worth fighting for." "Hold your breath," Makya instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Feel your heartbeat. Release the arrow between beats." Liam squinted down the shaft of the arrow, trying to focus on the small target Makya had placed against a juniper trunk. The bow in his hands was smaller than the giant's massive weapon, crafted specifically for the boy's size and strength. 3 days of practice had left his fingers blistered and his arms aching, but determination kept him at it. "I can't feel my heartbeat," he admitted. "Not when I'm concentrating this hard." Makya placed one enormous hand against the boy's chest. "Close your eyes," he directed. "Listen inside." Liam obeyed, becoming aware of the steady rhythm beneath his ribs. "Now open. Find target. Breathe in." The giant guided him through the sequence. "Hold. Feel pulse. Release between." The arrow flew straighter than any previous attempt, striking the outer edge of the target. "Good," Makya approved. Again. Since the bounty hunter's visit a week earlier, their days had taken on new purpose. The casual lessons in crafts and skills had transformed into focused training. Makya taught them as if preparing warriors, not just hunting and tracking, but how to move silently, how to hide, how to observe without being seen. "Why must I learn this?" Sarah had asked when Makya began teaching her to identify animal tracks and distinguish human footprints. "Knowledge keeps you alive," he'd answered simply. Now she worked nearby, grinding specific leaves into poultices under Makya's occasional guidance. Her illness had sparked interest in the giant's healing knowledge, and she proved an apt pupil. Toby, too young for the bow, practiced moving silently through the underbrush, a game Makya had devised to channel the boy's energy while teaching crucial skills. "Makya," Sarah called. "Is this right?" She held up a clay bowl containing a greenish paste. The giant examined her work, then nodded approval. "Good for wounds," he explained. "Stops bleeding. Fights evil spirits in the blood." "Infection," Liam translated, having learned to interpret Makya's sometimes archaic terminology. As afternoon faded toward evening, they gathered firewood together, maintaining the new habit of staying within sight of one another. Toby dragged a branch nearly as large as himself, proudly refusing help. "Makya?" the boy asked suddenly. "Did you have a mom and dad?" The unexpected question hung in the air. The giant continued gathering kindling, his expression unchanged, and Liam thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke. "Yes, long ago." "Were they giants too?" Toby persisted. A shadow of a smile touched Makya's lips. "Father tall, mother small. Like our parents," Sarah observed. "Mom was petite, but Dad was over 6 feet. Not giant," Makya corrected with gentle humor. "Just tall man." This small joke, rare from the usually serious Makya, delighted the children. Even Liam found himself smiling. "What happened to them?" Toby asked. "Your parents." "Toby," Liam warned. "That's personal." Makya shook his head, indicating the question didn't trouble him. "Father died fighting bluecoats, soldiers," he clarified. "Mother from coughing sickness. Many winters ago." He fell silent as they carried the wood back to the cabin. Later, as they sat around the fire after dinner, Makya surprised them by continuing his story unprompted. "Grandfather raised me after, taught me medicines, hunting, stories." His voice took on a rhythmic quality, like one reciting remembered verses. "He said being tall was gift from Creator. You will see farther," he told me. "Reach higher. Protect longer." "Like you're protecting us," Sarah said softly. Makya nodded once. "Circle of life. Grandfather protected me. Now I protect you." "What about Niall?" Liam asked, the name still spoken carefully between them. "How did you meet her?" The giant's expression softened at his wife's name. "Trading post, 20 summers ago. Her father was medicine man from different band. She, unafraid of my size, called me Gentle Mountain." The memory brought a rare, full smile to his face. "Did you have a wedding?" Sarah asked. "Apache way," Makya confirmed. "For days of songs, prayers." Niall wore dress with 1,000 beads. His fingers touched the necklace he always wore. "Made this for me. Said it would keep my heart with hers." The silence that followed felt sacred, a space holding both memory and loss. "Do you think she's still alive?" Toby asked, the innocent question that adults might avoid. Makya gazed into the fire. "Heart says yes," he answered honestly. "Head says no. That's why you put out the stones," Liam realized. "You're not sure." "Every sunset," Makya confirmed. "Until I know." Later, as the children prepared for sleep, Liam noticed Makya studying the small bow he'd crafted. "Something wrong?" the boy asked. The giant shook his head. "Making memory," he explained. "Like drawings." Liam understood then. Makya was committing to memory this unexpected family that had formed around him, treasuring it even while knowing its fragility. Just as he preserved Niall in his artwork, he was preserving them in his heart. The realization brought a lump to Liam's throat. "We won't disappear," he promised impulsively. "Not like she did." Makya's eyes, ancient and knowing, met his. "All things change," he said gently. "But while here, we protect each other." The storm announced itself first as a distant smudge on the horizon, a darkness gathering against the afternoon sky. Makya studied it with narrowed eyes, reading the clouds as others might read a book. "Bad coming," he announced, turning toward the cabin. "Big storm." Liam, helping repair a loose shutter, followed his gaze. How can you tell from here? Color wrong, Makya explained. Too green. Wind changing. He pointed to distant dust devils swirling at the canyon's edge. Need to prepare. What followed was a flurry of activity. Makya directed the children with calm efficiency, securing loose items, reinforcing the lean-to shelter where firewood was stored, bringing the few chickens into a corner of the cabin. The roof, the giant noted with concern, pointing to a section where previous repairs showed signs of weakness. Need fixing. Despite his size, Makya moved with surprising agility across the sloped surface. Liam followed more cautiously, handing up tools and materials from the ladder. Together they worked to reinforce the vulnerable section, patching holes and securing loose boards. Good helper, Makya approved as they finished. Strong hands. The simple praise warmed Liam more than he expected. Before he could respond, a powerful gust of wind nearly knocked him from his perch. Makya's massive hand steadied him instantly. Inside now, the giant ordered. Storm comes fast. By dusk, the world outside had transformed. Wind howled through the canyon like a living creature, driving sheets of rain against the cabin walls. Lightning tore open the sky in jagged wounds, followed by thunder that shook the very ground. Sarah sat with Toby near the hearth, telling stories to distract him from the storm's fury. The boy flinched at each thunderclap, trying to hide his fear. The thunder is scared of this house, Sarah assured him, inventing wildly. That's why it's shouting so loud, trying to frighten us away. Really? Toby asked doubtfully. Really? She confirmed. Thunder is afraid of brave boys who help giants fix roofs. Makya, checking the windows to ensure they remained sealed against the deluge, paused at her words. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. A particularly violent gust slammed against the cabin, and a sharp crack sounded from above. Water suddenly poured through a new gap in the ceiling, directly over the children's bed. Break-in roof, Makya stated grimly. He grabbed a deerskin and climbed onto the table, using his height to press the hide against the ceiling, temporarily stemming the flow. What do we do? Liam asked, raising his voice above the storm's roar. Need to fix from outside, Makya replied. Too dangerous now. Hold until morning. He glanced around the cabin. Need bucket for water. Need move bed. The children scrambled to help, Sarah finding a pot to catch the drips while Liam and Toby dragged the bedding to a dry corner. As they worked, the sound of rushing water grew louder. Not from above, but outside the cabin. Makya cocked his head, listening intently. His expression sharpened with concern. Flash flood, he said. Canyon filling. Are we in danger? Liam asked. Cabin high enough, the giant assured him. But he broke off, moving swiftly to the door. Opening it a crack, he peered into the storm-lashed darkness. Animals. The small corral where Makya kept a mule and 2 goats stood on slightly lower ground. Through the driving rain, they could see water already swirling around the animals' legs, rising rapidly as runoff funneled down the canyon walls. Without hesitation, Makya grabbed a length of rope and stepped into the storm. The wind nearly tore the door from Liam's grasp as he moved to close it behind the giant. I'm going to help, the boy decided, reaching for his coat. Me too, Toby insisted, already pulling on his boots. No, Sarah protested. It's too dangerous. Makya said to stay inside. Those animals are part of our... Liam caught himself. They're Makya's livelihood. We have to help. Before Sarah could argue further, both boys plunged into the storm. The rain struck like physical blows, instantly soaking them to the skin. Wind-driven grit stung their eyes as they fought their way toward the corral. Makya had already reached the animals and was working to free the frightened mule. The water had risen to the creature's knees, swirling with debris carried down from the heights. Take goats, the giant shouted when he spotted the boys. He tossed the smaller rope to Liam. Higher ground. Liam grabbed the rope, then Toby's hand, and sloshed through the rising water to reach the bleeding goats. The smaller animals panicked at his approach, but hunger had made them familiar with the children who sometimes fed them. Easy, Liam soothed, securing the rope around the first goat's neck, then the second. This way. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a world transformed by water. What had been dry scrubland hours before was now a churning river. As they struggled toward higher ground, Liam felt Toby's hand suddenly tear from his grasp. Liam! The boy screamed as a surge of water knocked him off his feet, sweeping him toward the canyon's lower reaches. Makya's roar rose above even the storm's fury. Abandoning the mule, the giant lunged through the floodwater with impossible speed, his massive strides covering ground that would have taken Liam precious seconds to traverse. As Toby's small form disappeared into the darkness, Makya plunged after him without hesitation. Dawn revealed the storm's aftermath. Uprooted bushes, scattered debris, and mud everywhere. But it also revealed Makya sitting outside the cabin door, carefully rebandaging Toby's ankle while the boy recounted his rescue for the dozenth time. And then Makya just reached into the water like a bear catching salmon and pulled me right out. Toby's hands gestured wildly, his scrapes and bruises forgotten in the excitement of the story. We had to climb up the canyon wall in the dark. It was scary but amazing. The giant finished securing the bandage, his own exhaustion evident in the slump of his massive shoulders. He had carried Toby for miles through the storm, finding a route back to the cabin long after Liam and Sarah had returned with the goats, fearing the worst. Brave boy, Makya said, ruffling Toby's hair with gentle fingers. Good climber. After breakfast, they surveyed the damage together. The roof would need significant repairs. The chicken coop had partially collapsed. The garden was a muddy ruin, but they were alive and together. As Liam and Sarah gathered scattered tools, Makya studied the canyon walls pensively. Something wrong? Liam asked. The giant seemed to come to a decision. Time to show you something, he said. Important place. Curiosity piqued. The children followed as Makya led them along the canyon rim, then down a narrow trail that wound between towering red rock formations. Toby rode on the giant's shoulders, his injured ankle no impediment to adventure. The path grew steeper, occasionally requiring Makya's assistance to navigate difficult sections. After nearly an hour, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a sheer rock face blocking further progress. Without explanation, Makya moved to a specific section of wall, reaching high to grip a nearly invisible handhold. His massive strength shifted what looked like solid rock, revealing a narrow opening. Secret way, he explained. Apache hiding place. Very old. Single file, they entered the hidden passage. Cool darkness enveloped them briefly before opening into a sheltered canyon invisible from outside. Sunlight filtered down in golden shafts, illuminating a spring-fed pool surrounded by surprising greenery. But it was the canyon walls that drew gasps from the children. Every surface was covered with ancient paintings and carvings, handprints, animals, geometric patterns, and human figures. Among them, unmistakably, were images of people of extraordinary height walking among normal-sized figures. Giants, Sarah breathed, looking from the images to Makya. The giant nodded. Sky-touching people, he translated. My ancestors. There were more like you? Liam asked, studying the petroglyphs with newfound interest. Long ago, many, Makya confirmed. Now, few. He touched one carving reverently. Grandfather's grandfather made this mark. The children moved through the hidden canyon in awestruck silence. The place felt timeless, protected, a sanctuary preserved through generations. The paintings show the giants as leaders, Sarah observed, pointing to scenes where the taller figures stood centrally in hunting parties or ceremonies. Honored ones, Makya agreed. chosen by Creator to protect the people, to see farther. He smiled faintly at the familiar phrase. Toby wandered to a section where the rock face had been smoothed for newer carvings. Look, these are fresh, he called. Makya joined him, studying the area with narrowed eyes. Indeed, several figures had been added recently, a family group and what appeared to be a woman standing alone. You made these? Liam asked. The giant nodded slowly. This one. He indicated the family group. Me, Niall. Children we hoped for. His finger traced the outline of the woman standing apart. This one not mine. A chill ran through Liam despite the warm air. Someone else knows about this place? Few remember, Makya acknowledged. Old ones. Medicine people. He studied the unfamiliar carving with concerned eyes. This new. Could it be Niall? Sarah suggested hesitantly. Maybe she comes here? Hope and doubt warred briefly in Makya's expression before settling into resigned certainty. No. Different hand. Different meaning. He pointed to symbols surrounding the female figure. Warning signs. Warning about what? Liam asked. Change coming. Makya translated, his brow furrowed. Strangers from east. Blood payment. He shook his head, frustrated by the symbolic language's ambiguity. Hard to understand all. Is it about us? Toby asked, suddenly subdued. The men looking for us? Makya rested a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. Don't know, but this place safe. If danger comes, we hide here. He led them deeper into the hidden canyon, showing them a small cave with evidence of occasional habitation. A fire ring stored firewood, primitive cooking implements. Grandfather brought me here as boy, Makya explained. Taught survival ways. Said sacred places protect those who respect them. Later, as they prepared to leave, Liam noticed the giant kneeling by the spring, seemingly deep in prayer or meditation. What's he doing? Toby whispered. Giving thanks, Sarah guessed. Or asking for protection. When Makya rejoined them, his expression was resolved, determined. Canyon has spoken, he said. We must prepare. For what? Liam asked. For whatever comes, the giant answered, leading them back toward the hidden entrance. But now we have advantages. Secrets. Sacred help. He tapped his chest. And each other. As they emerged from the passage, Liam glanced back, already unable to discern how they had entered. Some places kept their secrets well, revealing themselves only to those meant to find them. Like Makya himself, the canyon offered both shelter and strength, if one knew how to see beneath the intimidating exterior. Here, Makya said, carefully scoring a notch in the juniper trunk. And here yesterday, he indicated another mark slightly below the first. Tracks show 6 men. 2 we know. For new. 3 weeks had passed since the storm. The cabin repairs were complete, the garden replanted. But their vigilance had not wavered. Each day, Makya and Liam checked the perimeter of their territory, looking for signs of intruders. Today they had found fresh evidence. They're circling, Liam observed, studying the pattern of marks they'd made on the tree over the past 5 days. Getting closer each time. Makya nodded grimly. Testing. Learning paths. Watching habits. Why don't they just attack? The question had been troubling Liam for days. They have guns. Numbers. Want children alive, Makya answered. Need silence, not bodies. His dark eyes met Liam's. Dead witnesses still speak through others. The implication was clear. Garrett wanted the children captured, not killed, at least not where evidence could be found. The realization sent a chill through Liam despite the warm afternoon. We should leave, he suggested, not for the first time. Find a settlement with a proper sheriff. Tell what we know. Tried before? Makya asked. Liam nodded reluctantly. The first town we reached after it happened. The sheriff there knew Mr. Garrett. said we were confused, traumatized. He was going to hold us someplace safe until our uncle could collect us. Makya grunted understanding. Money talks louder than children. What do we do? Liam asked, trusting the giant's wisdom in a way that would have been unimaginable weeks earlier. Be ready, Makya answered simply. Tonight, prepare. Preparation meant packing essential supplies, food, water, extra clothing, medicines. It meant reviewing the secret signals Makya had taught them, bird calls they could use to communicate if separated. It meant Sarah sewing small pouches filled with the medicinal herbs she'd learned to identify, one for each of them to carry. It also meant Makya showing Liam where he kept his second knife, a hunting blade with a bone handle, smaller than the giant's usual weapon but perfectly sized for the boy. Last choice, Makya cautioned, placing the sheathed knife in Liam's hands. First run, second hide, third fight only if cornered. The boy nodded solemnly, securing the knife to his belt with trembling fingers. The weight of it felt simultaneously terrifying and reassuring. That night they ate dinner as usual, but with packs stored by the door and clothes laid out for quick dressing. Makya's evening ritual of stone setting took on a new significance, a quiet defiance against those who would disrupt the life they'd built together. They slept in shifts. Makya took the first watch, then woke Liam for the middle hours. Sarah would take the pre-dawn vigil. Liam sat by the window, knife across his knees, watching moonlight paint silver paths across the canyon. In those quiet hours, he found himself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought them here, the horror of losing their parents, the desperate flight through wilderness, the terror upon first seeing Makya, and now the giant was their protector, teacher, friend. Something more, though none of them had words for it yet. A flicker of movement caught his attention, a shadow detaching from deeper shadows near the chicken coop. Liam's hand tightened on the knife hilt, but he remembered Makya's instructions. Observe first, act only with certainty. The shadow resolved into a coyote, nose testing the air near the coop's reinforced door. After a moment, it slunk away, disappointed. Liam released the breath he'd been holding. Just as he began to relax, another movement, distinctly human this time, registered at the edge of his vision. A figure crouched behind the woodpile, barely visible in the moonlight. Heart hammering, Liam retreated from the window and moved silently to where Makya slept. A touch on the giant's arm brought him instantly awake, alert without confusion. Someone's outside, Liam whispered. By the woodpile. Makya nodded once, rising without a sound despite his size. He moved to Sarah and Toby, waking them with gentle efficiency. Time, he said simply. No further explanation was needed. The children dressed quickly, donned their packs with practiced movements. Makya doused the banked fire, plunging the cabin into darkness that would better hide their preparations from watching eyes. Remember plan, the giant reminded them, his voice barely audible. Hidden canyon. I follow after. We should stay together, Sarah protested softly. Makya shook his head. Need to slow them. Make false trail. He placed one massive hand on Liam's shoulder. Trust eldest to lead you there. The weight of responsibility settled over Liam, heavy but no longer crushing. He had been carrying his siblings' safety for weeks. The difference now was that he no longer carried it alone. I'll get them there safely, he promised. Makya nodded, then moved to the cabin's rear wall. Silently, he shifted a stack of firewood, revealing a small door concealed in the logs, an escape route built with careful foresight. Outside, a low whistle sounded, a signal between the watchers that they had not anticipated. Their time had run out. Go, Makya urged, as the first heavy footsteps approached the cabin's main door. Now. 3 days in the hidden canyon stretched the children's nerves to breaking. Each sound echoed strangely against the rock walls. Each shadow might conceal threat or salvation. Of Makya, there had been no sign since their separation. He should have been here by now, Sarah whispered, her usual optimism fraying around the edges. Liam nodded, keeping his deeper fears unspoken. They had heard distant gunshots that first night, 2 sharp reports followed by silence. Since then, nothing. Maybe he's still leading them away from us, Toby suggested, his faith in the giant unwavering. Makya's too smart to get caught. Liam wished he shared his brother's confidence. He had assumed leadership as promised, ensuring they remained hidden, rationing their supplies, maintaining the small fire in the cave only during daylight when its smoke would be less visible. But with each passing hour, worry gnawed deeper. On the morning of the 4th day, Liam made a decision. "I'm going to check the cabin," he announced as they ate a meager breakfast of dried meat and pinyon nuts. "Just to look. I'll be back before dark." "No!" Sarah grabbed his arm. "We promised to stay together." "We promised to wait for Makya," Liam corrected gently. "But what if he's hurt? What if he needs us?" Before the argument could continue, a sound froze them all: footsteps approaching the hidden entrance. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Liam drew his knife, positioning himself between the sound and his siblings. "Get back," he ordered. Into the cave. The stone that concealed the canyon's entrance shifted, scraping against rock. Sunlight spilled through the widening gap. A massive silhouette filled the opening. "Makya!" Toby cried, breaking past Liam to launch himself at the giant. But Liam noticed immediately that something was wrong. Makya moved stiffly, favoring his left side. Dried blood darkened his shirt sleeve. "You're hurt?" Sarah exclaimed, already reaching for her pouch of medicines. "Small wound," the giant dismissed, though his drawn expression belied the claim. "Bullet grazed only." "What happened?" Liam demanded, relief warring with renewed concern. "Led them north," Makya explained, easing himself onto a boulder. "Away from canyon. 2 days false trail." He allowed Sarah to examine his arm, wincing slightly as she cleaned the wound with water from the spring. "Did you lose them?" Liam asked. A shadow crossed Makya's face. "For now. But new problem comes." He reached into his pouch, withdrawing a folded paper. "Found this in cabin when I returned." Liam unfolded the paper. Official letterhead. A badge printed at the top. His eyes widened as he read. "A sheriff?" he asked, disbelieving. "From Prescott." Makya nodded. "Waiting at cabin when I returned. Different man than you described. Older. Eyes that see truth." "What did he want?" Sarah asked, applying a poultice to the giant's wound. "Justice," Makya replied simply. "Came looking for Lancaster children, but not for Garrett." Liam's hands tightened on the paper. "I don't understand." "Read again," Makya suggested. "Middle part." Liam focused on the indicated paragraph, reading aloud for his siblings. "Evidence has emerged implicating Elias Garrett in the murder of Joseph and Mary Lancaster. Federal marshals have been dispatched to arrest Garrett, but we require the children's testimony to ensure conviction. As the sole witnesses, their safety is paramount." Hope and suspicion warred in Liam's chest. "It could be a trick." "Thought same," Makya agreed. "Asked questions. Tested him." A hint of grudging respect entered his voice. "He answered true." "You believe him?" Sarah asked. The giant considered carefully before responding. "Believe enough to listen more." "Where is he now?" Liam asked. "Follows behind." Slowly. Makya nodded toward the canyon entrance. "Gave my word to talk first before bringing stranger to sacred place." Liam's mind raced. If legitimate, this could mean safety, justice, perhaps even a future beyond constant hiding. If false, it was the most dangerous trap yet. "I'll meet him," the boy decided. "Just me. The others stay here with you." Makya shook his head. "Too dangerous still. I go." "No," Liam insisted with newfound authority. "You're injured. And—" He hesitated, then pressed on. "If it is a trap, The children need you more than they need me. Something shifted in Makya's expression. A recognition, perhaps, that the boy was becoming a young man before his eyes. After a long moment, he nodded once. "Careful," he advised, removing a small object from around his neck. A carved stone bear on a leather thong. "Take this. Shows you speak for me." Liam accepted the token reverently, understanding its significance. "I'll be back with the sheriff or not at all," he promised. The return journey to the cabin seemed both longer and shorter than Liam remembered. Heightened awareness made every sound significant, every shadow potentially dangerous. Yet purpose drove him forward with new confidence. As the cabin came into view, Liam paused at the tree line, studying the clearing. A single horse was tethered near the door. On the porch sat a gray-haired man in a worn coat, a sheriff's badge glinting on his chest. He appeared to be alone. Taking a deep breath, Liam stepped from concealment. "Sheriff?" he called. "I'm Liam Lancaster." The man rose slowly, hands visible and empty. "Been waiting for you, son," he said. "We've got a lot to talk about." "Yes, sir," Liam agreed, Makya's token clutched tightly in his palm. "I believe we do." Sheriff Daniel Holloway sat across from Makya, the giant's table making the lawman look almost childlike by comparison. Between them lay a stack of papers, official documents bearing territorial seals and signatures. "Legally speaking," the sheriff explained, "it's complicated. These children have no documented guardian since their parents' deaths." 3 days had passed since Liam's first meeting with Holloway. Cautious trust had developed as the sheriff shared details only someone genuinely investigating Garrett could know. He had shown Liam arrest warrants, depositions from former Lancaster mining employees, evidence of Garrett's corruption. Finally convinced, Liam had led him to the hidden canyon and the others. Now they faced the future. "The territorial judge can appoint a guardian," Holloway continued. "Usually that would be family, but with no relatives coming forward." "We have family," Toby interrupted, his small hand finding Makya's massive one. "Right here." The sheriff's weathered face remained neutral, though his eyes registered the gesture. "The courts don't typically grant guardianship to." He hesitated, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "To Apache?" Makya supplied, his deep voice without inflection. "To single men," Holloway corrected, "especially those with no blood relation." He sighed, removing his spectacles to polish them with a handkerchief. "And yes, your heritage complicates matters further." "Because people are stupid," Sarah said flatly. A startled laugh escaped the sheriff. "That's one way to put it, young lady." Liam, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "What happens if the court doesn't recognize Makya as our guardian?" Holloway replaced his spectacles. "Typically, you'd become wards of the territory, placed with approved families or in an orphanage until adulthood." "Separated?" Sarah asked, alarm sharpening her voice. "Possibly," the sheriff admitted. "Boys and girls are usually housed separately." "No," Toby's voice rose in panic. "No, we can't be split up." Makya's hand gently covered the boys. "Calm," he soothed. To the sheriff, "Other options?" Holloway spread his hands. "You could petition the court. Character witnesses would help, people willing to testify to your fitness as a guardian." A heavy silence fell. The villagers' hostility toward Makya was no secret. "There's also the matter of the children's inheritance," the sheriff added. "With Garrett's arrest, Joseph Lancaster's share of the company reverts to his heirs. That's significant property requiring proper management until they come of age." "We don't care about the money," Liam stated. "We care about staying together." With Makya, Holloway studied the boy thoughtfully. "Noble sentiment. But the court will consider financial stability in any guardianship decision." After the sheriff departed, promising to return in 3 days with additional papers, The small family gathered around the fire. The weight of impending separation hung in the air like smoke. "What if we just leave?" Toby suggested desperately. "Go somewhere nobody knows us?" "Always running," Makya said gently. "No peace that way." "But what choice do we have?" Sarah asked, tears threatening. "They won't let us stay with you." Makya rose, moving to a small chest near his bed. From it, he withdrew a folded deerskin, aged and softened with handling. Carefully, he spread it on the table, revealing a map drawn in faded pigments. Mountains, rivers, and symbols marking significant locations. "Tribal lands," he explained, tracing a specific area. "Here, Apache law stands above white man's courts." Hope flickered across the children's faces. "We could go there?" Liam asked. Makya nodded slowly. "Possible. My mother's cousin is band leader there." He touched another location on the map. "Or here, grandfather's teaching place, where sky-touching people once lived together." "Would they accept us?" Sarah wondered. "We're not Apache. Children belong to those who love them," Makya stated simply. "Apache wisdom." The decision crystallized for Liam in that moment. "We should talk to someone who knows both worlds," he suggested. "Someone who can help us navigate the white courts while honoring Apache ways." Makya considered this, then nodded. "No such person. Elder from Mother's band. Lives 3 valleys east. Serves as speaker between peoples." "Can we reach him before the sheriff returns?" Sarah asked. "Tomorrow at dawn," Makya decided. "I will take you." The following morning found them traveling along high ridges, avoiding the main trails. Makya set a pace mindful of smaller legs, occasionally carrying Toby when the terrain grew difficult. By midday, they reached a small homestead nestled against a hillside, part traditional wickiup, part cabin. Smoke rose from a stone chimney. Nearby, a small garden flourished despite the arid landscape. An elderly man emerged as they approached, his face deeply lined with age but his eyes sharp and alert. He showed no surprise at the sight of Makya, nor at the white children accompanying him. "Nephew of my cousin's son," he greeted in Apache, then switched to perfect English. "The giant who walks alone, no longer alone. I have been expecting you." "How?" Liam blurted, then blushed at his lack of manners. The elder smiled. "The canyons speak to those who listen." He gestured toward his home. "Come. We have much to discuss before decisions are made." Inside, as they shared a simple meal, Makya explained their situation. The elder listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as if confirming something already known. When the story concluded, he studied each child in turn, his gaze penetrating yet kind. Finally, he addressed Makya. "The path you seek crosses 2 worlds. Neither will make it easy." "We know," Liam answered before Makya could speak. "But we've decided. We want to stay with Makya. He's our family now." The elder's weathered face creased in a smile. "Then let us make it so in both worlds' eyes." "They're coming," Liam called from his lookout position. "At least 8 riders. The bounty hunters are with them." Makya nodded calmly, continuing to apply the red ochre streaks across his cheekbones. The traditional Apache war paint transformed his already imposing features into something almost supernatural. A warrior spirit risen from the canyon itself. Following 2 wolves' advice, they had returned to the cabin rather than hiding. The elder had been explicit. Running would only strengthen the legal argument against Makya's guardianship. Standing their ground might be dangerous, but retreating would forfeit their future together. "Remember what 2 wolves taught," Makya reminded the children as he finished his preparations. Strong like mountain, clever like coyote, the children had their own roles in the plan. Sarah had scattered specific herbs around the property perimeter, not for mystical protection as the approaching men might assume, but to mark safe pathways through the traps Makya had carefully set. Toby had memorized signals to relay between Liam and Makya if they became separated. And Liam himself kept the most important document, Two Wolves' letter to the territorial judge, secured inside his shirt. As hoofbeats approached, Makya stepped onto the cabin's porch, his massive frame silhouetted against the afternoon sun. The children remained inside as planned, watching through cracks between the logs. The riders halted at a respectful distance. Sheriff Holloway sat his horse at the group's center, his expression grim. Beside him rode a portly man in an expensive suit, clearly a government official of some kind. Flanking them were the two bounty hunters, Wilson and Thomas, along with four hard-faced men who could only be Garrett's hired guns. "Makya," Holloway called. "We need to talk." The giant remained impassive. "Talk." The official cleared his throat importantly. "I am Judge Reginald Porter of the Territorial Court. I have orders regarding the Lancaster children." He produced an official-looking document. "They are to be remanded into territorial custody immediately." "Why?" Makya's single word carried the weight of a boulder. "New evidence has emerged," the judge replied, avoiding eye contact. "Elias Garrett has provided sworn testimony that Joseph Lancaster was embezzling company funds before his unfortunate accident. The children's testimony is now considered unreliable." Inside the cabin, Liam's fists clenched. "He's lying," he whispered to his siblings. "Garrett's bought him off." Furthermore, Porter continued, "there are concerning reports about the children's current living conditions." Here he glanced meaningfully at the bounty hunters. "Claims of coercion, inappropriate influences. You mean being raised by an Injun?" Wilson interjected with a smirk. "No proper Christian upbringing here." Makya's expression remained unchanged, but his hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his staff. "Children choose to stay," he stated. "Ask them yourselves." "That won't be necessary," the judge dismissed. "The court has made its determination." He nodded to the armed men. "Secure the children. Use force if needed." Sheriff Holloway shifted uncomfortably. "Judge, I'm not sure this is proper procedure." "Your concerns are noted, Sheriff," Porter interrupted coldly. "But this matter is now under federal jurisdiction." As two of the men dismounted and approached the cabin, a new sound drew everyone's attention, hoofbeats approaching from the east. Moments later, 5 riders appeared on the ridge. Apache riders, led by Two Wolves himself. The elder raised his hand in greeting, then guided his horse calmly down the slope. Behind him rode 4 younger men, their expressions stern but their hands carefully away from weapons. "What's this?" Porter demanded. "Sheriff, you said nothing about Indian involvement." Two Wolves drew his horse alongside the judge's. "I am Thomas Two Wolves." He introduced himself in perfect English. "Former scout for the U.S. Army, current liaison between the Apache nations and territorial government." From inside his vest, he produced papers bearing official seals. "I believe you'll find my credentials in order." The judge scanned the documents, his florid face paling slightly. "What is your business here, Mr. Two Wolves?" "I have come to witness these proceedings," the elder replied evenly, "and to present additional evidence regarding the Lancaster case." He nodded to one of his companions, who handed him a leather portfolio, including sworn statements from former employees of Lancaster Mining who witnessed Garrett's threats against Joseph Lancaster 1 week before his murder. Wilson spat into the dust. "You'd take Indian testimony over a white businessman's?" "The territorial court recognizes all properly obtained testimony," Holloway interjected firmly, seizing the opportunity. "As does the federal marshal's office, which authorized my investigation before Judge Porter's unexpected involvement." Uncertainty flickered across Porter's face. The confrontation was evolving in ways he clearly hadn't anticipated. Makya chose that moment to speak. "Children," he called without turning. "Come." The cabin door opened. Liam emerged first, followed by Sarah and Toby. They moved to stand beside Makya, their stance mirroring his, unbowed, unafraid. Ask them, the giant suggested again, where they choose to be. Porter's eyes narrowed. This is not a matter of children's preferences. Actually, two wolves interrupted smoothly, withdrawing another document. Under the Treaty of 1868, it precisely is. These children sought sanctuary with a recognized Apache family group. They have undergone ceremonial adoption. The treaty specifically protects such arrangements from territorial interference. Holloway couldn't suppress a smile. Seems we have a genuine legal conundrum, Judge. One that might require review by higher authorities than those currently present. The balance of power had shifted palpably. Porter's certainty wavered as he glanced between the armed men he'd brought. Now outnumbered by the combined presence of Makya, the Apache riders, and Holloway's implicit support. This isn't over, he blustered, though his tone lacked conviction. There will be a formal hearing. We welcome it, Liam responded clearly, standing straight beside his giant guardian. We have nothing to hide. Does Mr. Garrett? The territorial courthouse in Prescott imposed its authority through architecture. High ceilings, polished wooden benches, the territorial seal mounted prominently behind the judge's bench. To Makya, forced to duck his head upon entering, the building represented all the artificial power of the white man's world, impressive to look at but built upon shifting foundations. Still, he sat patiently in the oversized chair specially brought in to accommodate him, his hands resting lightly on his knees. Beside him, the children sat in a row, dressed in their finest clothes. Items purchased in town the previous day with funds two wolves had somehow arranged. All rise, called the bailiff as Chief Justice Howard Mayfield entered the courtroom. The proceedings that followed unfolded with the measured ritual of law. Opening statements, presentation of evidence, testimony from witnesses. Sheriff Holloway detailed his investigation into Joseph and Mary Lancaster's deaths, presenting a compelling case against Elias Garrett that left the businessman ashen-faced at the defense table. Two former employees of Lancaster Mining testified to overhearing Garrett threaten Joseph Lancaster days before the accident that claimed his life. A bank clerk produced records showing Garrett's embezzlement, not Lancaster's. The corrupt Judge Porter was notably absent, having been called to the territorial capital to explain his actions. Through it all, Makya remained silent, speaking only when directly addressed. The weight of curious stares, some hostile, some merely fascinated by his size, rolled off him like rain from stone. The court calls Liam Lancaster, announced the bailiff. Liam rose, squared his shoulders, and walked to the witness stand with dignity beyond his 12 years. After being sworn in, he recounted that terrible night with unwavering clarity. The sounds that woke him, his father's desperate instructions, the hiding place from which he witnessed Garrett giving the order that orphaned them. "And where did you go after escaping the attack?" the prosecutor asked. "We walked for days," Liam explained. "We had nowhere to go. Then we found Makya's cabin." "Or he found us, really? And why did you choose to stay with him rather than seek help in town?" Liam's gaze found Makya across the courtroom. "At first, because we were afraid. Later, because we knew we were home." When Garrett's attorney cross-examined, attempting to paint Makya as a dangerous influence who had manipulated vulnerable children, Liam's responses were measured but firm. "Makya taught us to survive," he stated. "To hunt, to track, to heal. He protected us when men with guns came hunting us for money. He risked his life for Toby during the flood." His voice gained strength. "He never once asked us to lie or hide the truth. That's more than I can say for the men who killed our parents." Sarah and Toby testified next, their simpler accounts nonetheless powerful in their sincerity. Toby's declaration that Makya is our father now, even if he didn't start that way, brought unexpected moisture to more than one eye in the courtroom. Finally, Makya himself was called forward. The witness box creaked under his weight as he settled into it, looking somewhat like an adult forced into a child's chair. "Mr. Makya," the judge began, then paused. "I understand you prefer to be addressed simply as Makya?" The giant nodded. "One name is enough for one person." A ripple of laughter quickly suppressed passed through the courtroom. "Very well, Makya. You have no blood relation to these children. You are unmarried. You live in isolation with limited means of support. Why should this court consider you a suitable guardian for 3 orphaned minors?" The question hung in the air as Makya considered his response. When he spoke, his deep voice carried to every corner of the room without effort. "I was alone," he began, "for 2,000 days after Niall walked away. Each day, I placed stones at sunset, waiting for one who never returned." His massive hand rose to touch the beaded necklace at his throat. "Then these children came, hungry, afraid. They needed shelter, food, protection." He paused, finding words in a language not his first. "Later, they needed more. Teaching, understanding, love." His dark eyes met the judge's directly. "They chose me. I chose them. Among my people, this is how family forms sometimes. Not always from blood. And what can you offer them that a more conventional household cannot?" The judge pressed. "Truth," Makya answered simply. "Strength, patience." A rare smile briefly transformed his weathered face. "And I can see dangers coming from very far away." Another current of appreciative laughter rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge's stern expression softened slightly. The final testimony came from 2 wolves, who spoke eloquently of the Apache tradition of adoption and community care. He presented the court with documentation of Makya's legal right to tribal lands, property with considerable value, and of his skilled craftsmanship that provided reliable income. "In my 76 years observing both Apache and white ways," the elder concluded, "I have rarely seen children so well matched with a guardian, conventional or otherwise." As the hearing concluded and the court recessed for the judge's deliberation, uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Makya and the children waited in a small antechamber, the giant seemingly calm while the children fidgeted with nervous energy. "What if they say no?" Toby whispered, the fear he'd been holding at bay finally surfacing. Makya's large hand enveloped the boy's shoulder. "Then we find another way," he assured him. "Family stays family, even when papers say different." But behind his composed exterior, Makya harbored his own doubts. The white man's law was unpredictable, built on rules that often made little sense to his understanding of justice. When they were recalled to the courtroom, the future balanced on the edge of a knife. 1 year later, the cabin at the canyon's edge stood transformed. A second room had been added, its construction a community effort involving not only Makya and the children but several Apache families from 2 Wolves' band. A proper garden flourished where once scrub brush had dominated. Chickens pecked contentedly in a sturdier coop, and 2 milk goats grazed on the hillside. Most remarkable was the change in Makya himself. The giant still moved with the same deliberate grace, still spoke sparingly, still carried himself with dignified reserve. But the profound loneliness that had once shadowed his eyes had lifted. In its place shone a quiet contentment, occasionally brightened by the rare full smile that now appeared more frequently. "Liam," Sarah called from the garden. "Toby's stuck in the tree again." 13 now and growing rapidly, Liam set aside the arrows he was fletching and jogged toward his sister's voice. Sure enough, Toby clung to a high branch of the cottonwood tree, his expression caught between triumph at his climb and uncertainty about the descent. "I can get down myself," the 7-year-old insisted, though his white-knuckled grip suggested otherwise. Before Liam could formulate a rescue plan, Makya appeared, alerted by the commotion. Without comment, he simply stood beneath the tree and extended his massive arms upward. "Jump," he instructed calmly. Toby didn't hesitate. With complete trust, He launched himself from the branch into Makya's waiting hands. The giant caught him effortlessly, setting him gently on his feet with only a raised eyebrow as reprimand. "Sorry," Toby mumbled, properly abashed. "But I saw an eagle's nest and wanted to look." "Next time," Makya suggested, "ask first. We'll show you proper way to climb." The boy brightened immediately. "Really? You'll teach me?" Makya nodded once, then pointed toward the cabin. "Now help Sarah with vegetables." As Toby scampered off, Liam exchanged an amused glance with his guardian. The past year had solidified their bond into something neither had expected, but both now treasured. Not quite father and son in the traditional sense, but a relationship built on mutual respect and understanding that ran deeper than words could express. "Sheriff coming," Makya observed, his keen eyes spotting the distant rider before Liam could discern the figure. They walked together to meet Holloway at the property's edge. The lawman had become a regular visitor and unexpected ally during the custody proceedings. His testimony had ultimately helped sway Judge Mayfield to grant Makya legal guardianship, with certain conditions: regular school attendance for the children in the nearest town, quarterly visits from a court representative, and trustees to manage the Lancaster mining inheritance until Liam came of age. "Afternoon," Holloway greeted, dismounting. "Brought the mail." He handed a small bundle to Liam, including another letter from that lawyer in Denver about the mining shares. Liam nodded his thanks, but his attention was caught by a different envelope, one bearing an official seal he didn't recognize. "Also," Holloway continued, addressing Makya, "thought you'd want to know. Garrett's conviction was upheld by the Territorial Supreme Court. 20 years hard labor. Justice," Makya acknowledged with satisfaction. As the sheriff accepted their invitation to stay for dinner, Liam examined the mysterious letter. Something about its weight, its formality, raised the hairs on his neck. With careful fingers, he broke the seal and unfolded the single page within. His sharp intake of breath drew Makya's immediate attention. "What is it?" the giant asked, concern evident in his voice. Liam read the letter twice before answering, his hands trembling slightly. "It's from a missionary station near the Mexico border," he finally managed. "They found a woman there, Apache. She's been very ill, with no memory of who she is or where she came from. But recently she started talking about a giant who waits for her by a canyon." Makya went absolutely still, not even seeming to breathe. "They found this on her," Liam continued, removing a small object from the envelope. A carved wooden figure of a bear, identical to the one Makya had given him during their first days together. The letter asks if anyone knows of an Apache giant who might have lost his wife. For a long moment, Makya remained frozen, his face unreadable. Then, with deliberate movements, he walked to the canyon's edge where 8 stones now formed his evening ritual. 5 for Niall, 3 for the children. Sarah and Toby joined them, sensing the momentous nature of the news. Together, the family stood as the setting sun painted the canyon walls in shades of fire. "Will you go to her?" Liam finally asked. Makya turned to face them, his expression both hopeful and troubled. "We will go," he corrected gently. "Family stays together." "But what if she doesn't remember you?" Sarah worried. "What if she doesn't remember anything?" "Then we remind her," Toby said with a child's simple certainty. "We tell her stories until she remembers." Makya nodded, his hand coming to rest on the boy's shoulder. Wise words. As twilight deepened, Sarah disappeared briefly into the cabin, returning with a sheet of paper. "I made this last week," she explained, holding it up for them to see. "I didn't know why at the time. It was a drawing, rendered with the skill Makya had helped her develop. It showed 4 figures standing together at the canyon's edge, 3 children of decreasing height and 1 towering adult. But Sarah had added a 5th figure, sketched in lighter strokes, as if waiting to be fully realized. "For when we become complete," she explained. Makya accepted the drawing with reverent hands. For the first time in the children's memory, they saw tears gather in the giant's eyes, not falling, just catching the last light like tiny stars. "Tomorrow," he said, tucking the drawing carefully inside his shirt, "we prepare for journey." As darkness claimed the canyon, their shadows merged into a single silhouette against the indigo sky, separate individuals forming one unified shape. No longer 5 isolated stones placed in hope and remembrance, but a new formation altogether. Family.